Hi everyone, it's Tom with the LEC preview of already the third week of the LEC Spring Split. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. As usual, let's share some thoughts on the teams heading into the weekend based on their performances in previous weeks. And also, of course, look at the schedule and predict what the outcomes might be. So let's take a look at the standings first and go bottom up and see how each team has been performing. At the very bottom, we have Astralis. Obviously, have not been doing well at all with 0 wins. I think for Astralis, the biggest point is that against Mad Lions last week, they did show some promising signs. They were very proactive, they were very aggressive, and actually did catch Mad Lions on the back foot. Put them in a difficult position. So I think for them, that is the biggest positive, that against a team that did start the LEC Spring Split so well and has champions on the roster, they were able to do something, but obviously the overall power is still way too low. So there is some upward trend, but I still don't have any high hopes for the team overall. We'll have to see if they are able to have more of those proactive early game moments and actually get ahead and in a position where they are able to close out a game. So there was like a small sprinkle, small sparkle of hope for Astralis last week, but overall, yeah, it wasn't very good. Then we have SK and BDS, both only have 1 win at the moment. Let's start with BDS first. I think compared to the first week, where they were able to get somewhat even in some of the games with some scrappy playstyle, I think the second week was a bit more disappointing overall. Against Rogue, they basically stood no chance. Against Vitality, they did have that early invade where they killed Selfmade, which was nice, but after that, they weren't really sure what to do with it, and Vitality very easily equaled the score and also eventually won with relative ease, I would say. So I think that was a very disappointing week for them. You could argue that Vitality and Rogue are obviously 2 very strong opponents that BDS played against, but yeah, I think even in their gameplay itself, it didn't give me enough spice. It didn't give me enough hope to say, okay, this is a team where I can see how they eventually are gonna win those games against potentially tougher opponents or even equal opponents. So a lot to work on for them. Obviously, as I said in my first preview, I think that this rookie is gonna need a lot of time to develop. So give them the benefit of that doubt. If by the end of the year, for example, they're not even close to a playoffs contender or anything like this, then they obviously will have failed. In the end, though, at the moment, I just have to evaluate them as they are. So we move to SK. SK Gaming got kind of decimated, I think, by G2 Esports. They had the benefit on SK that they played against Excel on the second day, but unfortunately for SK Gaming, this was the only game where Excel actually did manage to close out an early lead. We'll get to Excel in a bit, obviously. But that was a bit tough to see that against Excel, who was clearly fumbling with their late game, that SK Gaming didn't really know how to capitalize on this. So for SK, I'm sorry, I also have the feeling that there is a lot of work that needs to be done for the team to have the same objective in the game. Treats and Jezu is a decent bot lane, but I think when it comes to Gilius and Certus, and also Janax, who I think last year was performing pretty well in the summer split, but all of them have been very quiet. So it's going to be tough for that team to make something happen if they aren't, well, first of all, aren't on top of their game, but also seemingly aren't sure what their objective should be in the game, and that allowed Excel for that second win on that second day last week. So there's still a lot to work on for SK as well. Then we have teams with 2 wins, which are XL and Vitality. So let's start with XL first. Obviously, XL has gone through a massive, unexpected roster change. Advn has been benched and XL was able to pick up Mickey X. the former G2 support who was benched after he wasn't able to find a team in time last year in the offseason. So he was inactive on G2. And Excel got the opportunity to pick him up, and they did. I did an exclusive interview on the day it was announced with Mickey X. I immediately reached out, and thankfully he was up to do the interview. So if you want to read that interview, I'll link it in the description below. And it all kind of happened in the span of 1 week, where Excel, after their first week, immediately thought, okay, we need to explore our options, and they reconsidered Mickey X again. So there's a lot of emotions involved in the community regarding this decision, because advn last summer split came in halfway through the split, and together with Marcoon had a big impact on Excel, and also on in the limited time that they were able to be on the roster, they really elevated their gameplay, and Marcoon and advn were a very good duo. advn is 24, but he was only a rookie, and now 2 weeks into the split, LEC benches or kicks a rookie essentially. Still, he's only like he's been playing in the LEC for 6 weeks, which is less than a split, so I consider him a rookie. And they obviously have a bad track record with this. Last year we had a whole thing with Checolate, for example, who got kicked almost, well, not almost instantly, but very soon after debuting and showing some promise, I think, in the game. So there's a lot of emotions involved. For me, I try to always take a more nuanced stance, if there is one. Obviously, I was also not too happy for advn. It really sucks for him that this befalls him. So is it possible to be upset about advn being benched so soon? Yeah, and at the same time thinking it's a good decision for Excel to pick up Mickey X? Yes. advn could have been treated better, in my opinion. advn deserves to be in the LEC, in my opinion. But at the same time, Mickey X is a better support player than advn. The one thing I don't get, though, and this was also discussed on the Best Damn League show with Dom and Thorin, is that Excel branded it as, okay, we want Mickey X because he has that winner's mentality. And I think that Mickey X is not the leader that Excel needs in terms of their gameplay, because Excel has trouble closing out games, as I spoke about before. And they need somebody who makes decisive plays, and I'm not sure if Mickey X is the one who does that. We'll see, obviously. Maybe with all his experience he can lead them in that regard, but yeah, so I think in the end it's a good decision for Excel. Obviously the way in which it happens is pretty scuffed, and it was bound to ruffle feathers, so I understand all the emotions involved by the community, and thankfully Mickey and advn have both been very respectful towards each other, especially advn. He posted a very long tweet explaining his situation, and he said, I wish Mickey X all the best, which is a great maturity. So yeah, so heading into the week, I think Excel with this roster move is going to need some more time to find their footing, because they've only been practicing with Mickey X at the start of this week. So if they go 0-2 this week, I think the community is obviously going to meme a lot, but I'm granting them some leniency there. So like, okay, well, you've made this investment, now you have to make playoff. If you don't make playoff now, just sell the org. Sell your slot, go away. Nobody cares about you. Like then for all I care, they disappear. But for the coming weeks, for the coming few weeks, like give them 2 or 3 weeks, give them some time to find their synergy again with roster. So that was a very long segment on Excel, obviously because they are the org that people were talking about last weekend. Vitality then picked up 2 wins last week. I recommend everybody watch the post-game lobby of day 2 of week 2. It's with Perks and Lore hosts. And it's a very insightful talk with Perks about what he brings to a team. I'm very surprised that not more people have picked up on creating content around this or mentioning this content. I know I have it saved. I have that entire vault saved, and I plan on studying it in the future for like content and stuff like this. But that is just a fantastic insight into what the team offers and what Perks offers. So I recommend watching that. I think Vitality The overreactions obviously at the start were way too high. Give the team some time as well. Are they going to be perfect now from now on, now that they've picked up 2 wins? Absolutely not. They still made mistakes in their games, even though they won. But at least you can see what this roster can do when they want to perform. And this is only going to go up on average. It's going to go with dips and peaks, but eventually the average will go up. So very hopeful for that team. Then we go to the 3-win teams, which are Misfits, G2, and Mad Lions. Mad Lions, they came in swinging, obviously, in the opening week, and after that kind of had some trouble, especially their game against Astralis, which I mentioned before when I was discussing Astralis. Their game wasn't very pretty. They weren't happy with their wins. Overall, I think Mad Lions is okay. They are finding their new identity with 2 new players. I think Unforgiven is undoubtedly already a very talented bot laner. Reeker is the one I have more doubts about, because Mad Lions, in an interview I did with Mac, he said we played a lot around Humanoid and how he wanted to play the game. Reeker doesn't have that impact quite yet, so they have to find a way in order to shift what they want to do. And that's going to take them some time as well, but overall, obviously, a very potent roster, especially in the bot lane. And in the jungle is insane. Then we have Misfits. Misfits at 3 wins already, I think was pretty positive for them. Obviously, they didn't have the strongest opponents in the first week, but overall, I think they can be, generally satisfied with their development. I'm not a fan of Mursa yet. I think he's pretty invisible, but he's a rookie. And in my opinion, you give rookies at least a full year in order to live up to the potential. Viteo was a rookie last year and had a very good first game, but then fell off in the following weeks. And now he's a pretty stable mid laner, in my opinion. So that just goes to show what a rookie can develop into. So I wouldn't go too hard on Mursa alone just yet. It's just that in the first games, he hasn't really impressed me. As a team, also, Misfits doesn't really impress me. I think they have a lot of rough edges, and I wonder if they can get those all polished before the playoffs arrive, because I don't see big improvement in their team play just yet. I think it's very scrappy. G2 obviously had their sad loss against Vitality. They got completely obliterated by them. And I think that was a pretty worrying thing, even though it's still early. The fact that Caps was completely invisible. The bot lane couldn't do anything. I think Jankos tried his best to salvage everything by supporting his lanes. But that was a bit worrying and disappointing. I wonder if Caps is going to be able to rise up to the level he once was, because if there's any roster that he needs to do that on, it's this roster, because of the overall star power is just lower than any G2 roster he has played on previously, even on Fnatic, you could argue. So he is a big focal point for me. I did see an interview he did with Ashley Kang, and it just sounds like without like a crowd or something to look forward to, this guy just has his energy drained. And then we have Fnatic and Rogue, both undefeated so far. I think both teams have shown great promise. Both teams have a lot to work on as well. They are playing each other this week, and we'll see who gets the upper hand there. I'll do my prediction in a bit. But I think for Rogue, it's mostly about communication in order to make a pretty good team. I saw Otto Omni did the LEC Euphoria podcast. He talked a bit about, we don't need to have the best players in every role in order to win. Like look at Mad Lions last year, who didn't have that. They had Humanoid as the best mid laner, but their bot lane was outclassed by Upset and Hillesang, for example. Or Hans Sama was also a better bot laner, in my opinion, than Karzi. I think in everybody's opinion should be. But they still won titles. Fnatic, I wonder how long it's going to take for people to capitalize on Wunder a bit more. I think he has been the most underperforming player there, but as a team, Fnatic is gelling pretty well. They're stumbling forward. They still have clear mistakes in their play as well. All right, I've rambled for a long time now, especially about Excel. So let's just get into some predictions, right? I'm sure that you want to hear now what you came here for. So we kick off today with BDS versus Astralis, two bottom tier teams. Um, Actually, if I have to take a guess based on last week, I would just say it's Astralis because they had such an aggressive early game against Mad Lions. And you know what? I'll just say Astralis is gonna win. I think that their being White Knight and Zanzara and Promiscu as a team, as a core, has stayed mostly the same. I think is gonna get them a lot of benefits. On BDS, I do think that overall they have better talent, but it's just not clicking so far. So I think Astralis is gonna win that. XL versus Mad Lions, as I said, I think XL needs more time to adjust now that they have brought on Mickey X. And Mad Lions doesn't, so I think Mad Lions is gonna win that. Vitality versus SK, I think Vitality wins that just based on raw power alone. And then we have Rogue versus Fnatic. So as I said, I think Rogue needs to improve their communication. I think Fnatic has just some overall rough edges. I'm not particular fan of how they set up objectives so far in the game. And as I said, I think Wound near the top lane can be a big liability. Although Amne has been performing very well, so maybe Rogue can capitalize on that. In the end, though, I think Fnatic just has the better players. And I think in these early stages of the LEC, that is what matters most. So when they go head to head, I do think that Fnatic is actually going to win this. But if Rogue finds a way to haunt the top lane and transition that lead into something more, I think they can defeat Fnatic. It's just that in the current meta, it's a lot focused around bot lane, and especially with top lane not being able to teleport down to the bot lane to help out, I think it's going to be difficult for Rogue to transition that early lead into something more against Fnatic. So in the end, I do think Fnatic is going to win and is going to go 6-0 in this split at this point. But I would not say Rogue is hopeless at all. I think they have a real shot at Fnatic. Just that I think that Fnatic at this point in time is gonna win. And we close out the first day with G2 versus Misfits. Now, after last week, G2 lost against Vitality. I think people might overreact and say, oh, this team is hopeless. I don't think so at all. I think it's just that Vitality is way more skilled than G2 if you look at the overall power on that team. Against Misfits, though, I think G2 will be able to recover fairly easily. Caps versus Veteo might be an interesting matchup to look at. I did an interview with Veteo, and he said that he thinks it's definitely possible for him to become the best mid laner by the end of the LEC year. And he needs to surpass Caps for that, obviously. So that will be interesting to see how that 1v1 goes. But overall, if I look at Jankos, he is such a better jungler than Zlatan. He offers so much more to his team. And Zlatan is new to the LEC, so obviously he's going to need some time to figure that out. It's just, at this point in time, if you look at Jankos compared to Zlatan, it's David versus Goliath, but in the story where Goliath actually wins. So it's an alternate ending there. Hirit versus Broken Blade at the top lane is also going to be interesting because Hirit obviously did have a solid opening week, but then fell off a bit. Broken Blade has been very consistent in the top lane, a very good player. I think it will be interesting to see how Hirit handles that. So yeah, I think G2 in the end will win it based on their team play already, based on how evolved their players already are. It's for Misfits, I guess their way of winning would be to capitalize on hoping that Caps doesn't show up and getting Viteo in a carry position, because he can carry. He's definitely a player with carry potential, but I think that's not a lot to hope on, because I think Caps and Jankos are not going to be jungle mid-dived by Misfits. So on the second day, BDS versus SK, two bottom tier teams again. Yeah, what to say about this one? I think both these teams are very flawed. I think on BDS, Xmeti has been a big liability, and against SK Gaming, that's probably going to be exposed a bit more because Treats and Jesu have pretty good synergy. And for BDS, It's rough, man. It's rough. Even though I do think Nuclear Int is a better mid laner than Certus, and yeah, in the top lane, I think Genex is also gonna be better than Adam at this point. So I see no real way for BDS to win against SK, if I'm very honest, unless there's like a mega draft difference. But SK Gaming is just very solid around objectives. Well, not very solid, but relatively solid compared to BDS. I think that they are also just in individual level ahead of BDS. In team play, I think they are ahead of BDS. It's not high in the LEC, but I think relatively it is. So I think SK Game is going to win this. Excel versus Astralis. Woo! That is a tough one to predict as well. More bottom tier teams for me at the moment. I know that I predicted Astralis to win against BDS. But that's mostly because BDS lacks a lot of team play, and Astralis has that, even though it's not a very high level. I think XL is going to be able to defeat Astralis, partially on their early game, but mostly on individual power level. I think XL's early game has been super solid, and I think it will continue to be. So Astralis is going to have a very tough time on finding that early lead, which they were able to leverage into some pressure against Mad Lions, as mentioned before. But then, yeah, if it comes to individual level, Excel is just superior. So it's gonna be a meme if Excel goes 0-2, obviously, but I do think that they are gonna go 1-1 in this weekend and pick up their win against Astralis. Misfits versus Mad Lions. I think Mad Lions should win this with relative ease. As a team, Mad Lions is not obviously at the team at their communication that they were last year, where they were pretty high, I guess, when the playoffs arrived. But they are already ahead in Misfits if you just look at how they move around the map. I think Kaiser is going to be a very important factor in this one, because I think he can set up Unforgiven for very early leads in the bot lane, but also transition to the mid lane, where maybe I think Veteo is a better mid laner at the moment than Reeker, but I think Kaiser and Oyoya can help out in the mid lane to just to get Reeker in a more comfortable position. Let me adjust this. All right. Then we have Vitality versus Rogue. Obviously a very tough weekend for Rogue, also having to play against Fnatic. Yeah, I think Rogue is going to lose this. Perks will probably want to prove a lot against Rogue. And we've seen last week against G2 what it means if Vitality wants to prove themselves. They were very dominant. I do think Rogue absolutely has a shot in this one. I think in the bot lane especially, Comp has been very good. Trimby had a very good second week. I think he was in my MVP of week 2 honorable mention, or player of the week honorable mentions. But I wonder if they are going to be able to find the same edges against a team like Vitality, because that's going to be very tough. Vitality is obviously going to... I think they're going to go full forces. So I do think that Vitality is going to win this. A way for Rogue to win this, I guess, is securing the early game very aggressively and putting Vitality in a position where they can't climb back. But I have a hard time seeing how they're going to do that unless they get a very good draft advantage against Vitality, which very well might be the case. Vitality in the first week did experiment a lot with their drafts and it failed. I do think, though, that this week, like last week, they're going to be a bit more according to the status quo in draft. So, yeah, I think Vitality will win that. And then we have G2 versus Fnatic, the most hyped matchup in the LEC's history. Even though both of these teams look wildly different now. I don't know why it keeps jumping up, for fuck's sake. Even though these two teams are wildly different now in terms of their roster, with Caps and Hylissang being the only ones who were there like 2 years ago, I think. Yankos obviously as well. It's still always going to be a big rivalry. It's still always going to be something people look forward to. And I do think that Fnatic is going to pretty easily win this. If we look at how the team has been performing as a team if I look at how G2 has been performing as a team with the individual members, I think Fnatic should have the edge in pretty many cases. The only thing, once again, I'm going to talk about draft. I think that is where G2 might find an edge, but I do think Fnatic has the flexibility in their players in order to respond to anything crazy that G2 might go for. Like, for example, we've seen Targamas on the Zyra support last week. Didn't work out, obviously, but hard to say. I don't think it was his fault necessarily. You know, I think if G2 pulls out something there, I think Fnatic can respond pretty well and capitalize on that. So those are my predictions for this third week of the LEC Spring Split. Let me know in the comments below if you agree, if you disagree, what your views are. And as usual, I will be uploading one interview next week to this channel, if I'm lucky enough to get my request accepted. But so far it's been going well. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.